Um, boy, this is a real drug movie, man.
Yeah, no kidding. Really, I saw this in college in like the late '70s.
You did see it in college in
Yeah,
3D
they
or
had
in
like
2D?
a movie marathon on Halloween, so they played all these movies. And one was Johnny Got His Gun. That was a freaky movie too.
Yeah, it's an anti-war movie.
Yeah, and the other one was this movie, and they handed out the 3D glasses. But so I saw it in 3D.
with all the
I mean,
with all
it
those
was
snakes popping out
yeah,
of the skulls
up
and
that
stuff.
yeah, and the hands,
Yeah.
spiders, but it was kind of effective. But I mean, we were all making fun of it. But I watched it again, and actually, it's not that bad a movie.
It has its moments. It has its moments. It's creepy. The mask is creepy. You
Yeah,
know, the guy
it's
when he goes into the netherworld with that white mask on his face, he's pretty creepy too.
yeah. I
It's
think if they got rid of the 3D effects, it would have been a lot more interesting.
yeah, because and it's like somebody pointed out, the 3D effects are only in like maybe 14 minutes of the movie, so it's basically like mostly a 2D movie.
Yeah,
I guess 3D fans got give it a lesser rating because it's not all 3D like say House of Wax or whatever.
yeah.
But
Huh.
it's a strange movie. I saw it. I remember hearing about it like I guess it was in the 80s, and it was going to
Mhm.
be playing on local TV, and you went to 7-Eleven to get the
Get
free
the
3D
yeah,
glasses. They did
yeah.
this one and Gorilla at Large, and I don't know, maybe there was another one, I don't know, but
There was a
uh,
couple of them I remember them doing that for. You get the 3D glasses with a Slurpee or something like that.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, so um, I may have watched it. I don't know. The pictures, the images from this, I definitely have seen
Mm.
forever on Famous Monsters and stuff like that, and they're effective. I mean, the cloaked people and the woman with the woman that he's chasing that they never can get to. It's I don't I mean I don't know. This is from what I read. This is Canada's first horror movie.
Yeah.
So go figure. 1961 took them that long to make a horror movie, but okay. Canada,
Plus
Canada,
Canada.
Canada, our future 51st state. Oh boy, we'll see what happens. It's gonna be a wild ride.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah, no kidding.
it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting the
Oh
next few
yeah.
years. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I think the main guy, the psychiatrist, my friend told me he was in soap operas for a while. So,
Yeah.
and I think he might have been in Star Trek too. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
the old especially the
Paul something, Paul. I'll look him up. He does have that Vulcan look to him, or whatever. You know what I mean? He looks like he could be a relative of Mr. Spock or whatever. But yeah, yeah, no, no, it's a cool movie. I mean, after a while, when it started out and you see the mask and the effects, it was really like, wow, this is intense. The story started getting a little, weak as the movie kept going or whatever. But whatever. I mean, it's just a horror movie. We're not talking about the all time classics of all time or whatever.
well
Uh,
after a while it would put the story on
Paul
hold
Stevens. Paul Stevens is his name.
just to go into the 3D effects. And that's what I mean. If they took some of those 3D things out, it would be a better movie. It would have been
Okay.
moved a little faster. Like there's one scene where the doctor's lying on the psychiatrist. He's lying on the couch. This is in the new sequence when he slowly disappears and just his hands are there and they start moving. That was a creepy effect. And then they bring him up and start on having him come to you in the face to do the 3D. And it's like, it kind of ruined it.
The girlfriend, his girlfriend, the actress Claudette Nevins.
Yeah,
This was the first movie, but boy, did she do a lot of TV.
yeah,
I'm
a lot
looking
of
through
TV. I
here.
think she definitely was in Star Trek. Couple, but
She
all of
does. She looked familiar from the beginning that I saw her or whatever.
yeah.
She was in Star Trek Insurrection, but
Okay,
I don't know about the TV show. But they're talking about the nurses, the defenders, the FBI, Newhart,
yeah,
Barnaby
all those.
Jones.
Yeah, if you watched a lot of TV in the late '50s, early '60s,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
had
yeah.
a
You recognize your face.
whole stable of actors, even into the '70s, who just played bit parts here, and that's how they made their living.
Yeah, I mean, from '64 to 2005, she was in
Mm.
lots of TV shows or whatever. Oh, she passed away. Oh, in 2020. Sad. But anyway, yeah, she was in Sleeping with the Enemy. Anyway, but yeah, Paul
Paul Stevens.
Stevens,
Hmm.
the main guy, was in. Well, he didn't have such a huge he didn't have such a huge filmography, but he was in Hercules movie, Hercules and Princess of Troy, Marlowe, Patton, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Oh, there you go. I think I saw that in the theater.
He did too. I don't remember him. He probably played some authority guy who.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
he was on TV a lot. Oh Man from Uncle, Wild Wild West, Rockford Files, Beretta, Macmillan and Wife, and he was
yeah,
nominated for a Daytime Emmy as an outstanding supporting actor for his role in Another World. So there you go.
yeah, and a lot of actors later on, when they couldn't find roles, they would go to soap operas, and
Soap operas, yeah.
they'd be there for years.
Yeah, I mean, there's people on soap operas as of today that have been there for 40 years. What's his face? Eric Braden from the Rat
Yeah, yeah,
Patrol.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
He's still on a soap opera.
yeah.
He's one of the most popular guys because he's been on there for 40 years. He
Geez.
was in one of the Apes movies, Escape from Planet of the Apes or something
Yeah,
like that. And Colossus the Foreman Project. He was
uh,
the lead scientist, but he's still around. Some of them pass away, but yeah, it's a steady paycheck. You
yeah. It's
know,
like, what more can you ask?
a lot of
I
people
guess
start.
it's like having like a guy who wants to be an artist or an illustrator. It's a graphic design job, and he just hangs out there for the rest of his life. Hey, it's a
That's
steady
it.
paycheck.
That's exactly right. That's a great analogy. Yeah,
That's a steady paycheck, and I'm cool with
yeah. Until they ship off your jobs to India, but that's a whole nother story about
it.
me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh God.
Anyway, but but yeah, no, I mean, a lot of actors started out in soaps and became big stars. Brad Pitt, I believe, was in soap operas. A lot of other ones, I can't think of them. I mean, then some of them became. Well, Rick Springfield was in a soap opera, but I think he was already a music guy before.
General
But then,
Hospital, I think, wasn't it?
yeah, but then from General Hospital, he got a hit with Jesse's Girl, and
Oh,
he became a rock guy again. There's a lot of people, like that, but yeah, television. And remember back then, television was if you were a TV actor, you usually were a TV actor only. Occasionally some could, move on to movies or do both, but a lot of times you were just a TV
yeah,
guy,
TV actor.
or
And in
you were a
fact,
movie guy or a TV guy. That's it.
yeah, and a TV guy could do commercials,
Yes.
but a movie actor, unless you went to another country like Japan or whatever,
Yeah, that's interesting.
Europe.
Yeah.
But here, because TV was looked down upon and commercials were
Yep.
looked down upon, but and that's changed a lot in
Yeah,
recent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
There's commercials that they did for Japan that, like Schwarzenegger did, and people like that, and they were getting
yeah,
paid like millions to do.
yeah.
And you never saw them here until like somebody,
They put it
uh,
on YouTube.
put on YouTube. Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting how many. I was looking for commercials to put on one of the movie shows that I do,
Hmm.
and I found a couple of commercials. There was one of them. The one that I specifically remember was it was like for some shampoo.
Hmm.
And the two female roommates are Farrah Fawcett and Penny Marshall. And I'm like, wow,
Wow.
that's really interesting. That's the first Laverne and Shirley, I guess, or something. You know, if you see this stuff, Tom Selleck did commercials. A lot of people. Jason Alexander, I've seen in commercials. A lot of people. A lot of people.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think Tom Selleck's big break was on he did an episode of the Rockford Files.
was it okay?
Yeah, where he played this fellow detective who everything was perfect for him, and like Ben Rockford's getting the short end of the stick and stuff. And I think from there he went to Magnum PI.
I think we did a movie with him. One of his early before he got famous was that Terminal Island where they stick a bunch of prisoners on an island to
Mm.
to like survive, and then it becomes like a dog eat dog thing. And yeah, we watched it on this show. I believe it's not a great movie, but it is what it is. I think Selleck even did a movie in the Philippines, one of those Filipinos horror movie, Daughters of Satan or something. One of those '70s deals. But yeah, he worked his way up to becoming a big star. But the story about him was he turned down Indiana Jones.
Hey, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he turned it down because either he turned it down or or whatever CBS or whatever had his show Magnum
Magnum. It was under
didn't
contract
let
or
him. He
something.
was
Yeah.
under contract, didn't let him do it. So Harrison Ford reaped all the benefits
Yeah.
of that franchise. But Tom Selleck would have been an interesting.
Yeah, I
Another,
don't know
another
if it would have been the same kind of movie, but
another interesting fact, and we're getting away from our movie, but one last thing was apparently, Burt Reynolds didn't like Selleck too much because he thought that he stole his act a little bit. Because remember, Selleck had that high
must,
pitched laugh too, or
yeah.
whatever, So
He
I
also
don't
had
think,
a mustache.
and that mustache, yeah. So I think Reynolds' star was descending a little bit while Selleck's star was ascending. I'm not sure, but I don't think they appreciated each other. But that's just
I
the way it goes.
remember reading somewhere that Lou Costello, when Curly from the Three Stooges
Yes,
disliked Lou Costello because he thought he stole his shtick.
yes, it's true. It's true. I read that before that Curly thought Luke was sold. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess I don't know. I mean, they seem pretty different to me, and by that time, I guess Curly had already been out of the business because he's had a stroke and he was
yeah,
he
yeah,
was he was messed up pretty bad. So anyway.
yeah.
Anyway, on to our movie, The Mask from 1961 from Canada. It's funny that you mentioned that. I guess this movie made the rounds. When you said that it showed in your college, did they do like did they do that a lot? Show like 16 prints and I
Well, yeah,
guess I
they
guess I
had,
guess they had a film department, you
yeah,
know?
there was an acting department, and there was also a movie club or group or whatever, and they would show movies.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Usually, they would, I guess, rent them and then
Yeah.
show 16 millimeter prints or 8 millimeter, whatever they had. And I can remember once they were going to show a porn movie, and that was
Oh
what it
no.
was. And there was a big outcry from everybody on the
Oh no.
campus, so they decided not to do it. But yeah, I mean, that's how I saw The Shining because they showed
You
it.
saw that in college? Wow.
Yeah, they would show them on the weekends. You'd pay, I don't know, it was whatever, like half price or something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was,
I mean,
yeah. So this was like every Halloween, at least for a couple of years, they would show like a whole bunch of movies. You'd get there at 8.
oh, all day movies, huh?
Yeah, yeah, 8. Well, 8 at night, and then they'd go all night until like 8 in the morning.
I'm sure there's a lot of funny smells in the auditorium too, or whatever. From
Yeah, and some of the
back
movies,
then.
they were all crap movies, like Body Parts and Johnny got this gun. Oh, like really obscure stuff they could rent cheap. And yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
this made the and it was making the rounds for a while. And then suddenly it disappeared off TV, and I don't remember ever seeing it.
It disappeared for many years.
Yeah, in fact,
Yeah,
there's a while I kept looking for it on YouTube to do it for this show, and I could never find it. Either that or it was like behind a paywall or something. So that when you said, "Hey, let's do the mask," I'm like, "Oh, finally, it's like on the
yeah. I
free."
finally found a copy of it on
Yeah,
there.
thank God.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college, I took a bunch of film courses because it was an English. It was an English credit. So hey,
Yeah, exactly.
watching movies and getting English credits, hell yeah,
Yeah,
it was fun, but we didn't see like The Mask. We saw like Citizen Kane and M and Birth of a
yeah.
Nation
All
and
those.
I
Like
mean,
those,
they're
like,
fine. I enjoyed watching them on the screen there, but yeah, it
they
wasn't.
did the same thing. I took a film class for an English requirement, and the teacher was talking about Laurel and Hardy, and the kind of,
Yeah,
well, all the old comics, like, um, W.C. Fields and Buster Keaton, and
Charlie Chaplin.
yeah. And one woman, she's like, I can't watch Laurel and Hardy. They're so mean to each other. And the teacher's like, well, whatever. So he's showing the reels, and she's sitting there because she was in the same row as him. She's crying, and then she had to get up and leave.
What?
Like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Yeah, that was very strange. I think I took three film classes because I had three English, and I didn't want to go to do right English lit. So I was like, film class? Yeah, man. The teacher already knew me. She'd like give me straight A's. She's like, hey, you're back.
Hey,
I like movies, but it was just the classics. There was never any. I mean, I would imagine now if you took a film class, they'd probably show Night of the Living Dead or something like that. But back then, they weren't really doing that kind of stuff or whatever. It was mostly the classics as it were.
yeah.
I mean, they
Well,
showed Birth of a Nation, and that's almost like a
wow,
that's almost like a movie that's not supposed to be shown now because it's so racist or whatever. But that guy pioneered a bunch of like shots. Griffith.
that's
He did a bunch of like interesting edits and shots and all that, so it had significance. It was just about, hey, it's a KKK, whatever,
right.
all the way for the KKK or some crap like that. So back in the late early '80s when I took the class, it was like, yeah, it was a different world.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, and that's probably about the same time I saw The Mask on TV.
Mm.
So, in this movie, I was reading that intro with the anthropologist talking about the mask before the movie starts. That was not. That was probably. They said that was edited out of all the prints. But it was recently Kino or somebody added it to it. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing it,
I
but
don't
yeah,
either. I just
it's
remember
kind
it
of
starting.
yeah, it was kind of
Also,
like okay, you know, little padding, but I think they took it out because it just kind of took away the flow of the movie. So
yeah.
anyway, so the first scene in the movie is a guy chasing a woman into the woods.
Yeah,
Pretty grim, pretty
you see
grim.
her scream, and he's chasing her. And again, it's one of those things. She's running, and he's plodding along slow, but she never seems to get ahead of him. And he finally catches her and strangles her.
Right, and
And then
she scratches his
as she
face,
scratches his face as he's strangling her.
which is an ongoing concept, and for the other guy anyway. But
Yeah.
that's getting ahead of ourselves. But
So then
yeah,
he goes to the um, his
psychiatrist.
psychiatrist's office, and he's all hyped up and whatever, and he goes in to talk to the psychiatrist, and he says, I remember having this, I don't know if it was a dream or not, or whatever, but where I killed this girl and I strangled her. And, the psychiatrist is like, oh, tell me, that's Paul Stevens' guy. And he's like, oh, tell me more. He says, no, no, this is real. This really happened. I'm cursed by this mask. And the doctor's like, well, show me the mask. And it's like, no, you want to keep it for yourself. And he runs out, and the
Yeah,
psychiatrist,
he's a psycho.
yeah, it's like, I'm not. So then he's
It goes back to the guy's house. He's at his apartment. And his landlady comes in or something for some reason or another, and
he says, I need you to mail this. And she's like, why, I'm
she's
not out.
complaining about his dirty
He's giving
apartment
her
and all
money.
that.
And then, yeah, his place is a wreck, and she's yelling at him for being a mess. Then after,
And she didn't want to mail it, but he
right,
gave her like a few bucks or something. She was like,
right.
"Oh yeah, sure, okay."
So then she leaves, and then he's walking around his apartment. He's got some kind of sense of peace, and he's looking at it he's got like a bobblehead he's looking at, and he's all smiling, and he gets a drink, and then he takes out a German Luger, which was a very popular gun in the movies
Was it
back.
really?
Yeah, because
Okay.
anytime, especially the bad guy, anytime he pulled out a gun, it was always one of those like German Lugers. And
Those
I can
Nazi
remember,
guns.
yeah. Yeah, I can remember having water guns that were,
I
you
do
get a
too. I remember. I
color,
remember that.
red, black, yellow, but they were all like little mini Lugers, and
I remember the mini Lugers. Yeah, I had one. I'm sure. You
I had
know.
tons. That's another thing you don't see nowadays. Water guns. They got those Nerf kind of style guns that
Oh
spew
yeah. Yeah.
thousands.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just a
Yeah.
regular water gun is either a ray gun or like a Luger. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. They used to have them at the dollar stores or
Yeah.
whatever.
So anyway, he shoots himself,
And
and
she comes in and well, no, she doesn't come in. She comes in. Yeah. Right. She
yeah,
sees
she
it.
hears the noise. What's this noise up here? And then she sees it, and then she turns around, and faces the camera, and screams. So then, you're at the police station, and the detective gets a message that there's been a murder or a suicide.
Hmm.
So he goes, him and his helper, I guess.
And here's another movie. I firmly believe that it's not in this scene, it's in a later scene, or maybe it was in this scene too. I firmly believe that a lot of these movies, you know how they have, this isn't necessarily product placement, but for some reason out of the blue when people are talking sometimes they decide they need to smoke a cigarette, and it's like, were movies promoting cigarette smoke because they weren't promoting a brand,
Well, back then, everybody friggin' smoked.
which is probably
I
why they
remember,
looked older, younger, I would
yeah,
imagine.
I remember that. I mean, you look now, like almost nobody smokes. But you'd go to McDonald's, there'd be ashtrays. A diner, there'd be those little foil ashtrays. They had those little
You're right.
1950s ashtrays. My mom had several of those big glass
You're
ashtrays.
right.
She didn't. She smoked. She made me smoke like 2 cigarettes a year, but we still had ashtrays.
That's right. I
Like
remember
all,
that.
all my brothers and sisters smoked. I didn't because I had asthma. All my aunts and uncles smoked. I mean, the family dog was smoking.
Yeah,
Everybody
really.
was lighting up and stuff. That's why I did see that show, Mad Men. Every 5 minutes, everybody's lighting up a cigarette.
I'm
I,
telling you, man.
I think it was for movies anyway. It was something for an actor to do rather than just
Sounds like a
stand.
prop to just, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great
like a prop
point.
thing.
To move
Yeah,
his hands around or something,
yeah,
or, yeah, I never thought about that. You're right, because I don't
that's
think
right.
it's in this scene, but there was another scene where he's talking to the girlfriend. They're both like awkwardly smoking cigarettes, and like, it was like, what? And anyway,
And another thing they always did in the movies and TV, but I never saw in real life, they'd light a cigarette and take like 2 puffs and then stamp it out.
yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
who smoked, they would like get the lid end off and then try to tamp down what was left. Especially if you only took 2 puffs, and then like put it back in the cigarette pack. Nobody just like and then threw a cigarette away.
yeah. No, it was. I don't know, but you see, no, you're right. Everybody. Once you got to be whatever age it was back then, 17, 18, everybody couldn't wait to. I hated
Yeah,
cigarettes. I tried them and I couldn't stand them.
yeah.
I was like
I was always going to the store to get my sister or brother or whatever pack of cigarettes. So I go in.
the kid, the
Yeah,
little
I
kid.
was like 10,
You're
and
10.
like for my brother, he smoked Lucky Strikes, and to
It's
give me a pack of matches.
so
And
messed
my
up.
sister smoked Kent, so I'd be buying cigarettes and matches. And then I don't know something happened where there was a law where kids couldn't buy
Yeah.
cigarettes or matches.
In the early 70s, I think they started putting laws on that you couldn't,
Yeah. And the cigarette machines, remember, you could get
Yes.
cigarettes in those vending machines.
Yes, you put the money in and you pull the lever and it pops
Yeah,
out with a little matchbox coming off with it. I remember I used to get the pack and then a little ting matchbox. Oh, thank you.
so anyway, the detective, after he lights a cigarette, he goes to the guy's room and they're looking for things. And
It was the kid. The guy was like an archaeologist or something too, I
yeah,
think.
he was yeah, he worked for the museum and he
And he
was
stole the mask, I think, didn't he, or
cataloging
something?
things at home.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
so the detective goes to the museum. He's talking to the director, and the director's like, "Oh, I'm shocked. cataloging things at home, and they couldn't find the mask. So the detective then goes to the psychiatrist and says, "Hey, this guy killed himself. What was going on with him?" And well, I can't really talk, but he was deeply troubled and blah 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 blah. And then the detective leaves, and you see the package that
The
he
secretary brought him a package.
yeah, brought him a package to the psychologist, and then he opens it and he sees the mask, and he's like, "Ooh, so he's like, oh, what is this? Oh." So then his fiance comes in. She's like, "You want to go for lunch and shopping?" He's like, "No, no, I gotta, look into this. I thought, this my patient sent me this mask, and she's like, oh, it's horrible looking." And it was really creepy. It was
It's based on an Aztec
yeah,
mask.
based on an Aztec mask.
Those Aztecs were crazy
Yeah,
people. They did a lot of messed up stuff.
it was like all little mosaic shiny tiles, and then the eyes were
Oh, it
like
looked like a
gold.
skull head with
Yeah, it
like
was a skull,
mosaics on.
creepy as hell. And that
There it
it
is.
was
There it is in your background. There, I'm
yeah,
looking
in the
at it
back
right now.
the acolytes crying. So she's like, all right, well,
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go now.
I'll
Blah
go
blah
now
blah.
back and pick you up for the way home. Whatever. So he's reading the letter the guy wrote, and the crazy guy who we saw kill the woman in the beginning of the movie. He's saying how the mask reveals something deeper than the subconscious, and all this mumbo jumbo and stuff. So then
Oh,
uh,
hold on. So then the guy the doctor leaves, and then the shrink puts a mask on.
mask on, yeah, and you
And
hear
then we
like
start getting, and then we get into psychedelic bad acid trip land when you.
yeah, and he's he's a character in this weird dream. Like you said, he's got that white mask on. You can only see his eyes, and he's running around this weird smoky background with things hanging. You see like Aztec columns with clawed hands coming out of them, and they're trying to scratch him. And there's these priests or acolytes, whatever. They're all wearing robes, and they all have weird faces. And there's a lot of fire around and coming at you.
A lot of skulls flying, a
Yeah,
lot of
a
skulls
lot of
flying.
skulls coming at you. And then
And then there's a
there's
woman with a white mask too that he's trying to reach, but some other guy like shoots fire at him. And
yeah, right. And I'm thinking, I wasn't sure if it was his secretary, because
no,
you could tell
no, it turns out to be somebody else when they remove the
his
mask.
fiance, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah, well, yeah. And in a later sequence when the mask is removed, his fiance was the one who's wearing the mask.
so he's after that 3D sequence. You see him riding.
The white mask, not the mask.
Yeah, he's riding. The psychiatrist is riding on the ground with the mask on, and his fiance comes in. She's like, "What happened?" And he's like, "The mask. It's revealed deeper secrets, and the true essence of what man is, and blah, all this stuff."
Yeah, aka LSD trip probably, but
So
well, the Aztecs weren't they doing but didn't they do that stuff that gets you all what do they call oh
it's
god,
like ayahuasca and peyote and
peyote,
all
all
that.
that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
All
all
the
that
psychedelic stuff. Natural
psychedelics.
psychedelic stuff, yeah.
But then he's telling her, she's like, "You got to get rid of this mask." And he's like, "No, no, I need the mask. Don't tell anyone."
And he's like all sweaty and
Yeah.
it looks like he looks like he's in a orgasmic something or other, It's
So
like, okay, dude, whatever.
she's like, "No, the mask is evil." And he's like, "No, it's teaching me something. I got to experiment with it." So she grabs the mask and she
Takes
runs back,
off in a cab.
takes off in the cab. Yeah. So he gets in his car and he's following. She gets to the museum
And she
and
gives it to somebody and he
gives it
takes
to
it
the
back
cabbie.
in. He
And
gives
the
it to the
cabbie
cabbie,
goes
right?
in, gives it to somebody else. You don't know. You don't see. And then he comes
Yeah.
out
You don't see it. No, you don't see
as
it.
the
No.
psychiatrist drives up. The cab drives off. So then the psychiatrist runs in to the museum. He's looking for the mask, and he's like turning over things and
And you,
like just messing around. And then he's hiding from the employees there and stuff. And then the scene changes, and the detective comes to the fiance.
And
And that's
that's the inappropriate or
yeah, with
uncomfortable
the weird,
smoking deal.
the whole, they're holding an ashtray between them, and he's
And you know what? The cop holds the cigarette like he doesn't smoke. You know,
yeah,
he holds
yes,
it awkward. It's like somebody said, "Hey,
yeah.
have a cigarette in your hand, just so it looks like you're doing something."
But then he's this the detective's questioning fiance, and she's I didn't know anything about it, and he's like, well, where's the psychiatrist? Oh, I don't know. He's probably at his office or whatever. And he's like, does he have the mask? Oh, I don't know anything about a mask. And he's like, well, I know you're lying to me. So he
Yeah,
leaves.
right.
And then it's back in the psychiatrist's office again. He puts the mask on again.
Yeah, so
And then,
obviously he found it and brought it
yeah,
back.
and which you don't see, but
No, what you don't see, exactly right. What you don't see. The next scene, you'd think you'd see a scene where he's like got the mask and he's leaving the museum, but no, it's just cut straight
it
to
just
the.
cuts like that. So he puts it on again, and there's more of that 3D thing, like spiders coming down in your face and hands coming at you, and then you see the
Skulls with snakes coming out of
yes
the eyeballs.
coming at your eye, and
You know what
and
you know what it feels like? It's like one of those old, like 1970s, like carnival rides or whatever, where they do all the goofball things to like try to scare you or whatever. You know.
then
Anyway,
he's seeing all these things, and then there was the woman again, and she's on an altar, and he takes her mask off, and it's a skull, and then that comes at you in 3D. I mean, it's all weird.
fire popping out at you. You know,
Yeah, and
there's
then you
that
see,
guy in robes with the fire, and then there's one of those guys that looks like a monk with a messed up face, and he
yeah, his
shows up,
eyes
eye
closed,
socket bulging out.
and then you see like there's some skinny guy wearing the mask and all ripped, tattered clothing, and he's like shooting fire at him and stuff.
Yeah.
Then after that, he takes the mask off, and he's all like yeah, he's like really stressed out, but also like he had an orgasm or something,
Yeah. He's all like
That's
he's
weird.
all sweaty and like freaked out, but he's like in exaltation. I mean, whatever. You know, totally excited.
And
Anyway.
he's in his office. So then his secretary comes in with nothing. I'm gonna we'll catch up on some work and stuff. And he's like, starting to talk her up. Oh, I never noticed how pretty you are and stuff. And he kisses her, and so she goes, well, I better go home. He's like, no, I'll drive you home. So they drive, and they're talking, and they're looking at the stars, and he starts kissing her and telling her how beautiful she is. Oh, I've always wanted this. And then he starts to strangle her, and
Yeah,
then
right.
I can't breathe. And then like she somehow accidentally leans on the horn, and it sort of breaks the spell.
Yeah, right.
And then the scene cuts. You don't see what happens after that.
No, you don't see what happened. You know, if she went running to the cops, you would think she would go run to the cops. Hey, this
Yeah,
psycho tried
seriously.
to strangle me. You know, but no, I'll go back to work for him later. You
Yeah,
know.
right. So then the
You
psychiatrist
see?
goes to his old teacher,
Yeah, right.
professor or whatever. He says, I need help. I find I have this mask. It's teaching me about the deeper subconscious, and I want to do experiments. And at first, the teacher's like, it's all in your mind, and then the psychiatrist gets all like stressed and worked up. He goes, all right, well, we'll do an experiment,
A
but
controlled experiment or
only
something.
you
Which is
stop it.
what they did with LSD back then. They would give it to
Yes,
people and control experiments or whatever to see how they would react within, but to watch them so they don't like go out and like jump off a building or something.
but then the detective goes to. It's just like the next day. The detective goes to the
They find fingerprints.
yes fingerprints all
Yes.
over the office of the museum. So then he detective goes to the psychiatrist, and the next thing is like, are you doing experiments with the mask? Do you have them? I don't have the mask. So then the fiance comes back in, and she's arguing with him. Says, "Got to get rid of the mask. It's evil. It's bad. It's like a drug." And she basically
She does. She says it's a
lays it
drug.
out
You're
like this
addicted
is
to it. She lays it
that
out. Yeah, she does.
you're a drug addict. And he's like, "No, the mask is hope. It's getting to know what's really deep below that." And she's like, "No, it's bad." And I said, I'm going to go to the police. And he says, oh, please just give me a few days. I'm working with the teacher and I'm going to,
We're going to analyze this
yeah, we're
mask
going to
and
do
see.
experiments. And I'm going to go tomorrow. She says, no, you have to go now. So they go to the teacher. She takes him to the psychiatrist, to the teacher. When the teacher says, I have him sedated. I think this was his college professor who's also
Yeah,
a
yeah.
psychiatrist.
He said I sedated him. He'll be out for the whole night or whatever.
Yeah.
That's what he said
So,
in it.
and she's like, well, like, what's going on? He says, well, masks have these powerful psychological effects on people, and you put it on, and you're almost like you're another person. So he's trying to psychoanalyze what he thinks. He thinks this is all in the psychiatrist's head, and maybe it is. I don't know. So then, he's explaining about masks, and then you see the psychiatrist. He's on the bed, and he wakes up again,
He
even
wakes
though
up.
he's supposed to be sedated. He wakes up,
Yeah.
and then he puts the mask on
Of
again.
course, they left him with the mask in
Yeah,
the room.
exactly,
That's
exactly.
that's when it starts getting stupid. Why'd you leave him with the mask in the room?
But then again, there's more 3D stuff going on, and the mask wearing skinny guy is shooting more fires at him. And this is where he's going to the white haired girl, and she's on the altar. They keep trying to
Yeah.
sacrifice her, and then she lifts the mask off, and it's his fiance. And then,
He goes up. He goes to her. She's on an altar or something, and the
yeah,
altar like falls into it disintegrates, and they fall into like a hole or something.
yeah, something like that. So
Whatever that means.
he takes the mask off, and he's coming downstairs, and they're like, oh, go back to bed. You did, the teacher and the fiance go back to bed, and says, no, you're trying to hold me back. So
He
he
leaves,
runs out and gets in his car and drives off. And the fiance finally calls the cops and
and he goes to
say,
the secretary's house.
yeah. So she's telling him, oh, he's out, he's got the mask, and blah, blah. She finally tells the detective what's going on. In the meantime, the psych like I said, draws to the uh, secretary's house,
Yeah.
and he's taking her out again. She's like looking at the stars.
Like
Aren't they
she wants to
beautiful?
go out again after he tried to strangle her or whatever. So
She says, yes, they're beautiful. And then he tries to strangle her again, like you said. And then I forget how she escapes, but she escapes somehow. So then he goes back to the house looking for the mask, the teacher's
yeah,
house, and he attacks the teacher and knocks him out. And then the fiance is trying to fight him to get the mask away, and he's like, "Put the mask on. You will see what it's doing and how wonderful it is." So he puts the mask on her, and she doesn't. Nothing happens to her.
nothing happened. Yeah, which is weird, but I
So
guess
he taps her and he starts strangling her. And the detective finally comes in, and he sees that, and so he
Here's the other one. He comes in and he punches him. And he karate chops him. And what does he kill him?
I don't know. You don't hear anything after that.
Yeah,
You
and
know
then
that, so it's like it's the end, and she's thanking him. And they almost sort of set it up like the fiance was going to end up with a detective, but like there's some budding romance there, but not. It was all
no,
weird. So
no, no. So
then
then the last scene is the mask is back at the museum and they're having a showing. Of course, this mask, which wreaked havoc and destroyed a couple of guys' lives and made them say, just put it back at the museum. It's
and
okay, you know.
it's not behind the case. It's just sitting on the pedestal
It's
out.
right there.
So the museum tour guide's talking about this mask was found at Tikal and blah 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 blah. And then they go, and we'll move on then to another part of the display in the next room over, and this is where we
Yeah.
found the mask. And as he's talking, one of the guys on the tour, he sort of goes back to the
He wanders off to the mask and he just
yeah, to the
stares at
mask.
it.
You can you sort of you hear that weird music in the background. It sounds kind of like a heartbeat. You heard that all throughout the movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Heard
yeah.
music, and it also sounded like a heartbeat. And you see him sort of like he's being tempted by the mask, and then it's like the end.
I mean, it it had some cool stuff. It had some, but it was it was the plot towards the end was like they didn't think it out. It was like, why
Right.
would the secretary not go to the cops and try to kill her?
Right.
Why would she like go out with him again? You know what I mean? Did the cop at the end kill the guy because he karate was that karate chop like the karate chop of death or something? I mean, what's the deal? And there was other things too. You're like, huh, what? But hey, it's just a B movie.
Yeah,
We're
it's a
not
B movie, and the point wasn't this guy's sort of story arc. It was just there
effects.
to feed the 3D effects.
And get people all like creeped out and
Yes.
freaked out.
Yeah. So whatever happened to him was irrelevant because now the mask is ready to go on to its next victim or something like
Yeah, I mean, this mask like almost murdered people, to people psychotic, and like you said, they just put it back out there like to somebody to grab and put on. It's like
Well,
what?
I think at least according to the movie, it's like nobody believes the mask has any kind of power.
That's true too.
Just all in the people's mind.
That's true too. Yeah,
So
because
you're kind of not sure. Is it like because when they put the mask on the fiance, nothing happened to
nothing
her.
happened. Yeah,
So is it
that
within the person's mind, or does the mask only reach certain people
the
who are like
it seems like
predisposed?
it seems like, yeah, that's right. It's like if you're attracted to the mask, it will make you go to weirdness. But if they just put it on and you're like, get this off of me, it doesn't work. I mean, nothing explained.
Yeah, but
Interesting.
interesting. It was a fun movie. And like I say, if they got rid of some of the 3D effects and had the those uh, those psychedelic mask scenes a little shorter, it would have been a much better movie. Then
I,
they could have
I tell
added a couple of scenes here and there, like
I,
what
t-
happened to the psychiatrist and stuff.
I tell you, I usually don't say this, but this movie, if they did it today, if they did a remake today, not that they're going to or want to, I would probably check it out because those sequences done in CG and all that would probably be pretty trippy, and they could
Yeah,
do a pretty great job at it. And then maybe tighten up the storyline or something. But I wouldn't mind seeing. Actually, one of the few times I would say that I wouldn't mind seeing a remake of this if somebody actually was
did it.
interested enough, like some filmmaker, like that guy. There's a guy now, that Nosferatu movie. I guess the guy who made the movie, he was like, since he was a kid, that movie, like, he just loved it so much. He finally, after he became a famous director, had a whatchamacallit, make a remake. It'd be nice if some guy that saw it when I was a kid would remake it and kind of make it, because it's definitely got the trippiness. It's got the,
Especially if you use some AI, because I've on
yeah,
YouTube you find some interesting movies
yeah,
of Lovecraft stories, and
sure.
they use AI to show the monsters, and they're all sort of bleeding into each other, and faces weirdly changing and stuff. If they did that kind of effect
Yeah.
when the person put the mask on, because they can get really creepy with some of that stuff, like eyes suddenly turning into mouths and
Yeah, you can imagine what they could do craziness
yeah,
with all these scenes. I mean, not that the scenes weren't creepy in the movie because they were, but at some point they was creepy, but they were silly too. You know what I mean? Because the fake snakes popping out.
yeah,
It's like I could see like this being remade by somebody, but and then give it a more
yeah,
of a drug, a thing to it, and what a historical thing. Yeah, whatever. I'm just saying, I could see it being
yeah.
remade, but I don't know if there's any interest in this goofy movie. But it was put out by Kino Lorber, which no, Kino Lorber used to be a company that only put out like art films or whatever. So now they're just doing anything now that they're restored. So I guess these goofball movies are so old now that they just kind of like they if they can redo them and they can remaster them and they do it now. You know what I mean? So it's just cool. But yeah, yeah. Even what's the Criterion every once in a while. They'll do a Criterion of the Blob or Night of the Living Dead or something like that. Because I guess honestly, these movies, I guess as the years go by and they become kind of like I don't want to call the word classics, but they gain a little bit of worth in their silliness, even like the Tingler or whatever, just
Right.
because they were
Yeah.
made at a certain
They
time.
become
And
product of the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
historical,
yeah,
historical,
and because of
regardless.
that, they have this uh, aura about them that it
Yeah.
sort of transcends what the original movie was.
Plus, they've already done all the classics, so
Yeah,
you
I
know they got
remember
to do something. They got to sell you something.
seeing the remake of the Blob, and they had the um, more modern special effects, and the movie itself was like, oh, it's it's
Yeah.
the Blob movie, but the Blob special effects for the Blob were great because there was like one scene where this couple are in a car and this girl has her face turned and he's like trying to talk to her and suddenly like you see the blob had entered her stomach and went up through her chest
Yeah.
and started coming out of the mouth and there was another scene where they were stuck in um, a phone booth and the blob was like crawling over it and you saw half digested people in within the blob that those effects were cool, they did it right.
Yeah.
But again, the movie itself, they had just Joe Blow actors, and they didn't really work on the script so much. But like if they did something like that, change the script, make it a little more tighter, and answered some questions like showing the psychiatrist finding the mask and what happened to him at the end, maybe seeing him go to an insane asylum or something, and
Yeah.
then have
Something
modern special effects that would have been
would have been interesting.
yeah, would be very interesting.
There was a movie I saw a long time ago. You probably saw it too, called Dreamscape, where like
Yeah,
uh, the whatchamacallit, Quaid, and there was a bad guy, and they go into the dream world and they
yeah,
fight, something like that. But even that was like
yeah,
1983 or something. Now they can go crazy with this stuff and turn it into like some weird Hieronymus Bosch world.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I'm just saying, it's a movie that would be interesting to be remade, but I don't know if they're going to do it or not. I don't think anybody. You never know. But
Yeah, you never
anyway.
know. Maybe out there's some guy who saw this and it's just stuck in his head. Well, this it's stuck in my head.
Yeah, it's definitely got scenes that for a little while there you go, wow, that's pretty weird,
Yeah.
like the guys, the fact that they wore white masks on their face reminded me of that Eyes Without a Face horror chamber
Mm-hmm.
of Dr. Faustus.
Mm-hmm.
That was it reminded me of that. It was
Yeah.
creepy, but then the plot just kind of fell apart, and whatever.
Yeah. Sometimes what happens in these movies, they start out pretty good, not bad, and then as they get to the end, they kind of rush it.
Yeah, especially like this movie. Yeah, it's like they
Yeah, and
rushed
it's
it. They
like,
didn't
well,
think
wait a
it
minute.
out.
Yeah, like what happened here and what happened there, and whatever.
Anyway, yeah. By accident, I guess YouTube, like every once in a while it pops up. YouTube is weird. Every once in a while they'll pop up something, and it's kind of relevant to you. You don't know where it came from. I'm like, okay, but this one wasn't that. But I'm just saying another instances. But this weird movie came. Well, I know why it came up because I found a something weird channel on YouTube where they put some of their movies on there.
Oh, cool.
I found a movie, and it's not worth watching and talking about. It's curiosity, but it's called Mr. Angel, and it was. I said, "What is this?" And I'm gonna start watching it, and I was like, "Okay." It's like at first it sounds like a James Bond movie because they're in a casino, but then it goes to like a guy on a plane landing, and there's a girl, topless girl on the. This is a '66 movie. She's waving him down, and he comes down, but his plane, like one of the not the wings, but one of the those things that if you're gonna land on the water, it keeps you
Oh,
floating. One of those things
the
breaks.
skis
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, yeah. And I'm
Pontoon.
going, yeah, yeah, right. And I'm going like, wait a minute. And the movie was shot in Fort Lauderdale, so I'm like, oh, I got to watch it. This is like Florida from '66. Boring movie. I mean, mostly it's just like it's shot in like the carnival scene was shot in Bahamas, which had
Mm-hmm.
gambling. There was no gambling back then in Florida, but the rest of it is like on Fort Lauderdale, Dania Beach, and it's just him and her running around, and there's scenes where you can tell she goes to Parrot Jungle, and she has a bunch of flamingos, and she's having, it's just, anyway, but I watched it, but I was also like drawing and doing other things. It was just kind of like, it was just it's a weird thing, you know. I'm drawing a movie, I'm watching a movie, but I'm not really concentrating. But it's there just in case something happens, and not much happens in this one. Just like running around on the beach. You know, towards the end they go to like a they go to on a boats, and you see people on boats. But it wasn't like one of these movies where it takes you on a travelogue of
Mm,
Florida, which was how I was hoping for. It would go inside Miami. It was just,
mm,
but it was just interesting. And I read about it. I said this was a movie that was never released. It was just they found a negative in what you call it a film lab, and they released it. They probably got it for nothing. And I'm like,
yeah.
wow. I wonder how many. I mean, it's. I'm not going to call this movie incompetent, but it sure needed some editing and something to make it make sense or whatever little sense or maybe a little more plot. But it was just a local, you know, thing done by some people with a few bucks in South Florida in '66, and it's very interesting that stuff like that shows up or whatever. But it's not going to be one of our movies because it's not. You'll be like you're really going to be fast forwarding through this one, you know.
You know, it's funny what you were saying about
Curiosity movie.
watching a movie while you were drawing. I belong to some group on Facebook, and every once in a while they'll post like TV guide like Saturday for the year 1960,
Mm, I
Sunday
love that. I
70.
love that.
And I would go and look at the movies in the evening and the late nights when I was usually up. And there are so many movies that I wouldn't normally watch because there's only like 3 or 5 channels. That was the only thing on. So you'd put on a movie and you would watch something like a Western, which I don't normally watch, or a drama or a war movie, but you'd have it in the background while you're drawing. And then every once in a while, something would catch your eye. So you'd watch a lot more movies compared to now when
Yes,
you
yes.
have just almost every friggin' movie available at your fingertips, and all you're doing is looking for something to watch, which is
You're right. You're right. It's overkill. It's
yeah,
overkill.
too much. So sometimes what I try to do is I go to Tubi or whatever. I pick a
Yeah.
subject and I go and the first movie that kind of says oh, it's interesting, I'll put it on and have it in the background while I'm
I
you know
mean, yeah,
or,
you've got that going on, but you also the fact that you have like access to like all this stuff. It's like
God.
you'll see stuff that you'll never even heard of
Yeah.
that was never released. It just pops out of nowhere. What was it? There was another one that I watched this week. Believe it or not, it was called. It was funny as hell. It was about. It was called. Oh gosh, it was another something weird movie. It was basically about like. You know the storyline. It's about some the car's driving and it dumps off some hot woman in the middle of the road, and you're like, oh, well, she's pretty hot. She's got quite a body on her. It's called Girl with an Itch. That was it. It was on something weird channel, and it's like she's just sitting there on the road. The guy just dumps her out. Like I guess I thought she was a prostitute. I don't know. And she's there with her like suitcase, and then some other guy picks her up, and then she's like, oh yeah, I need a ride, and you know she meets and he takes her to his house, and he's a rich farmer guy, and of course she's like messing around with all the guys there, and you know the old man falls in love with her. But it was kind of like, what the heck is this movie? I've never even heard of this movie before, but it was strangely compelling that
Right.
I actually like watched it because it was kind of sleazy. There's something about a movie that's like kind of sleazy, and you're expecting it's because it was from '58, but it just teases you. It doesn't give you all the sleaze. But she was like
Right.
this woman. Was pretty. She was showing off her ample bosoms or whatever. I was like, oh, that's cool. But the funny thing about it is the old man. I didn't realize until the end of the movie, or I wasn't paying attention until the old guy who falls in love with her is Robert Armstrong, who was the guy who discovered King Kong in the original King Kong. I went,
Oh,
oh,
no
that's Robert
kidding.
Armstrong.
Wow. Well, he
And
probably needed some money, so yeah, I'll do this.
it was probably one of his last movies. And the other guy that was in the movie was Robert Clark, who was in The Hideous Sunbeam. And I was like, oh wow, this is kind of cool. And the female was like, it's called Girl with an Itch. It's from '58 or something.
Mm,
And I think the female in it, the lady in it, this is one of her last movies. But it's too bad because she could have been one of the like '60s hotties or whatever, along with Van Doren and Mansfield and stuff like that. But you know, I did happen to watch two oddball, you know, movies. So you know, something. But it's got to be something that I've never heard of, and it's got to be something cheesy and cheap, and maybe a little sexy or creepy or whatever in order to get me to do it. But I have done it. I have done it. You know what I mean? But you're right. Back then, TV at night, they would just put on stuff that you'd never see during the day, you know, oddball old movies or whatever. Occasionally
Yeah,
you go, hey, look, there's so and so's in it, or that person's in
yeah,
it, or
exactly.
whatever.
Well, they knew they wanted content for the
For
station
late night, yeah.
late night,
For all
and
the
they knew a lot of
insomniacs.
people weren't watching, and you had like at most three or five channels if you were
Yeah.
lucky. So
It
there's
was
like,
usually
well,
it
let's
was
play
usually
this.
it was usually the UHF channels that would have the all night.
Yeah,
Not in my town, maybe in New York it was different, but in Miami it was just usually the UHF channels.
yeah.
Maybe on Saturdays, one of the ABC affiliate, which was a local channel during the day, they used to have all night movies. They used to have a creepy, you know, Nightmare Theater after the. Okay, here's what I remember. It was an ABC affiliate, Channel 10 in Miami, 60s, early 70s, whatever, before they changed the call letters. They would have they would have cartoons, ABC cartoons during the day, the Beatles, blah blah blah. Then they would have like maybe sports, and then they would go to news, and then
Mhm.
after the news, they would have the ABC nighttime programming, Hollywood Palace, some
Right.
sitcoms. But then after 11, ABC would end. This was just on Saturdays because I guess they figured, well, Saturday you don't have to go to work the next day, whatever. You know, they would have what you call it after the news. They would have like a Hollywood movie, you know, like a
Hmm.
big time Hollywood movie, you know, whatever, something with Susan Hayward or, and that would go on till like 12:31 in the morning. And then they would have the scary movie, Nightmare Theater.
Right.
But what I didn't know, because I was scared to watch Nightmare Theater, what I didn't know is after Nightmare Theater ended, like at 1 in the morning, they had all night mystery movies till like 6 in the morning. And the reason I found this out because if you go to Google News,
Uh-huh.
newspapers, they don't they it's weird. They have them now, but the Miami ones are gone. But they had TV guide. They had the newspaper, and you have to go through find the Saturday or the Sunday. They have the old TV
Right.
guides that came in the newspapers, and they would have a grid with all the movies. And I'm going like, wow, I didn't know they had an all night movie. So, but that was rare, you know, for like the local stations, I believe. And some of them was shut off at 1 in the morning or whatever. But the UHF channels are the ones that would show all night. And even and back in the 80s, I think it ended in the 90s, at least where I lived. They would have a host like Big Wilson was a guy who did the all night movies, and there was another guy called Dave Dixon. And I think that ended after a while, you know. And I mean, I think that was an 80s, 70s, and 80s phenomenon. And by the 90s, well, you know what happened? By the 90s, infomercials took over late night television.
That was the one thing that really killed television when they started doing those infomercials because they were cheap. I think the
They paid
people
the station to
paid the
show them.
station rather than having the station buy
Yeah.
a license for the movies. So yeah, that really screwed up television.
No, big time, and that was because of the government, whoever president it was, I don't even know, loosened
It was
there used to be restrictions,
yeah, a commercial
FCC
free.
restrictions on doing on that, and then they got rid of it, and then that ruined that, and other things happened, and
I think a
yeah, I don't want to
commercial
get into
free
politics, but
longer
you
than
know,
a minute, and then they, like you said, they got rid of it. And then
and
yeah, you have all these weird commercials, and at first because you never seen it before, I'm like, is this a talk show
yeah,
or
yeah, 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 yeah,
what am
yeah,
I watching? There was that guy with the ugly sweater and the glasses.
yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
tell us
They
something, and you're like, is this talk show I've never heard before, or what
yeah, exactly it.
the hell?
There was one of them down there. It was my favorite one because it cracked me up. It was like so he had some guy. He was on a panel. It was a kind of a lecherous guy with three hot chicks, and he's like, "So, ladies, does size matter?"
Oh,
Oh yeah, you saw it, didn't you?
so sleazy and
Totally sleazy. And the girl's like, "Well, yeah, you know, my boyfriend's okay, but you know."
oh man, I forgot about that one.
And then sleazy goes, "Oh, really? Tell me more."
And he had like the porn mustache and
Something like that,
yeah,
yeah.
oh
And he goes, and then I think they were trying to, and then they were selling some like, extension. It's like, hey, if he takes these pills, it'll be like, whatever. She's like, oh, really? I gotta try it, because I really like them. I was like, oh man, do you remember that? That was a classic one. So sleazy, but it looked at exactly what you said. It looked like a talk show.
Yeah.
There was either that or there was, hey, call up the party lines and you can meet blonde girls,
Oh
brunettes,
yeah.
Asians, whatever you want, And
Yeah.
I was like, oh boy, yeah. And then it's like, because I have recordings of it I burned them to DVD. After a while, like the whole night between the movies, all the commercials were just the party line or also a public service announcement or something. And then like by the early '90s, forget it was all gone or whatever.
Yeah.
I miss '80s and '70s and TV because that's when I watched late night TV and so on. It's like those eras, those 20
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
In the '90s, there were still a few things you could see. Like every once in a while, one channel would have a movie at night, like at 1 in the morning till 3 or whatever. But
I remember CBS had the
the
late
CBS Friday night movie,
yeah, Friday night. They also had the Late Show,
the Late Show. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the Late Show, and every once in a while the Late Show.
Oh, they
That
had three
was
movies, three shows. Oh, okay.
a Friday or so, and the Late Show came on at like 2:30, 3 in the morning to 5. And again, it'd be a western, it'd be a drama, a war movie.
It could be a TV show too, for that
Yeah, because
matter.
sometimes they would like play an hour-long TV
They show
show.
The Night Stalker on the
Yeah,
CBS late night movie, and then afterwards they would show a movie or whatever.
yeah,
But they would show. I remember because I had it started in the '70s, but by the early '80s I had a VHS, and they would show like on Fridays a Hammer horror movie or
yeah,
something like that. They were
yeah.
competing. I guess they were trying to compete with the local stations or whatever. But you're right, they did. They did do. They had the CBS late night movie, yeah.
Yeah. So
But if you,
that was good. Because a lot of times I would wake up, I couldn't sleep, so I even as a little kid, I'd turn it on and you could be watching something, and again, it may not be a movie you would normally want to watch, but it was on.
yeah,
Nothing
and it'll
else.
put you to sleep maybe if you
Yeah,
hope. So boring it might put you to sleep. It's just like
yeah,
people yapping or whatever. Or else what they would do is they would show a movie, and then after the movie was done, either they show another movie or they show an episode of Gunsmoke, or they would show like My Little Margie, or the George Burns and Allen show, and then that would end up like at 5 in the morning, and then I guess whatever happened after 5, I don't know. Sometimes they would actually, like at 5 in the morning or 4, if their show ended, they would actually play the Star Spangled Banner and go to like static for a couple of hours.
or something. You remember when they used to have the TV test pattern?
Yeah. Yeah. That was best. I still
Uh,
have a recording somewhere from a Spanish channel where they went to the test pattern. They went from the movie to the Star Spangled Banner, and then the guy in Spanish, esta que, esta estación es 5,000 kilowatts and blah blah blah, and it's this and that and the other thing, and then it would go. You would see like the test pattern for about a minute, and then it would go static for a couple of hours anyway. Then they'd come back in the morning at 6 with whatever they put. I don't know, this
Sunrise Semester or
sunrise semester or cartoons or
yeah.
some.
Yeah. Did you ever see those silent cartoons with the farmer, and it would have all black background music because there was no dialogue. They were silent cartoons, and he'd be
Yeah.
doing something, and the chickens would plot against him, or
Yeah.
all those silent cartoons. We had Channel 5 WNEW up in New York.
I saw NEW once.
They played. I mean, you could literally like turn on the TV almost any time, and they'd be running an episode of I Love Lucy.
Sure,
So,
sure.
so sometimes
NEW.
if I watched a really creepy or scary movie or whatever, I'd turn on Channel 5 to catch an episode of I Love Lucy, because that would kind of break that creepiness. You would sometimes get it. You're all
Well,
alone, you're in the dark, watching a creepy, like Dawn of the Dead, one of those.
not Dawn of the Dead, but whatever.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of those kind of weirdo monster movies that creep you out. And then you put on I Love Lucy, and that kind of like All right, so I'm okay.
Well, I tell you, I was in New York once in '86. We were visiting friends there, and I watched none of NEW. And my parents and their friends went out to the track or something. I just stayed at their house. This was in New York, in the city. I guess it was in Queens or I don't know, whatever.
Yeah,
Anyway, they lived in an apartment. So WNEU was showing like the primetime movie at 8 on the Tuesday or Wednesday. Dracula's Great Love with Paul Naschy. I'm going like, what?
yeah. Sometimes you would get that like a Tuesday afternoon or evening.
Some B movie, some horror
Yeah, some
movie,
B movie, and like, whoa, whoa,
and
and
you're like,
sometimes it would be on like Channel 4, like at NBC or
yeah,
ABC or CB, like not just like a local station, but like a prime time
yeah. It
station.
was weird to see
Oh,
like, I mean, Channel 5 was Fox, but it was before Fox was
yeah, this
a
was the
network.
WNEW, it's a local TV station in New York.
Yeah. But it ended up being Fox later, and it became one of
Yeah,
the
so
networks. But back then, it had to have been a big deal. I don't know, but I was like the 8 p.m. movie, Dracula's Great Love. They wouldn't be showing that in Miami. They'd be showing some drama or
right,
something,
right.
And there was another thing that happened, and that was really weird. It happened in South Florida. It was either 87 or 88. And I'm thinking they did this, the local UHF channels did this to compete with cable. For a while there, for a month or two, they started showing unedited movies. They showed
Really?
Taxi Driver unedited with all the language and all the stuff. But
Uh,
people were started complaining, and they stopped doing it. And I'm thinking the reason they did it was for people to start watching them and not watching Cinemax or HBO or whatever. But they stopped doing it because like old geezers would complain, and and they're like, "Hey guy, well, I was just watching TV, and all of a sudden this Robert De Niro starts saying the F word," Because a friend of mine worked in TV, and yeah, they people would complain
yeah,
and get
that's
people in
stupid.
trouble.
That's the stupidest thing sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah. So, but anyway, we got off on a tangent, but it was fun. It was
well,
a
we
fun.
always do.
Yeah, we always do. But the movie is only part of the show. It's
Yeah,
like.
exactly.
But anyway, so getting back to the mask, it's on YouTube. Check it out. It's worth watching as a curiosity. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but maybe if you know what it is, maybe if you were sleeping one night and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, you turned the TV on and this thing came on, it can give you a
Yeah,
little nightmare here and there. It
yeah, a
might,
little creepy because it did have weird, creepy
yeah,
scenes, and sometimes the lower budget movies because
they
you
are
didn't have,
creepier. They are creepier
yeah, they didn't
sometimes.
have known actors, and the
Yeah,
acting in it wasn't great. It seemed more realistic
yeah,
than some of the polished Hollywood movies because a lot of times they'd have to figure out how to do something with little or no budget. And some of the things they came up with were creative but weird. It's just like, ooh, this is strange.
yeah. No, it's true. They would also sometimes get away with things that the big budget movies couldn't do because they were trying to push the envelope a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like subjects or stuff that at that time the bigger studios weren't doing. They eventually got picked up on it and started becoming exploitation studios too. But some of the low budget ones would do interesting things, but. It's like the Something Weird channel, I'm sure they don't have all, I mean, they just have some movies on it, but I'm sure there's some movies like they probably from the 50s or 60s that tackle, weird subjects or whatever that mainstream movies weren't doing. But they would be doing it in the 70s or
Yeah,
whatever. So.
yeah.
But anyway, that's it for, the
That's it for
mask.
the
That's it for the
Mask.
mask.
Good movie to
Uh,
watch.
it's been a while since we did a show, but it's a good one. So, hope you all enjoy it. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with some other like-minded movie or something. It's not going to be Mr. Angel. I wouldn't put that through that, but it'll be something cheap and cheesy and
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. And fun.
But in the meantime, Roddy,
In the meantime, you should watch more B movies.